everybody. Is it a happy vulnerable AF Friday? I mean, I guess it is. Maybe we should start with a little bit of gratitude. I think I know that girl. I do think I know that girl. Oh, maybe not. No, it's just a car that looks like another car of somebody I know. Okay, anyway, sorry. That's my undiagnosed whatever my diagnosed PTSD and undiagnosed whatever the fuck else. My very squirrel type brain. And I think right now I just need to start off with some gratitude, right? I think a little gratitude. I got somewhere to live. I have a job. I always have a meal to eat when I'm hungry. Like, right? People that care about me. Oh, let's have some gratitude, because y'all, I'm tired of being tired. I can tell you that. And I think, honestly, you know, I get hard on myself. This is not what I was going to talk about at all, but it's kind of where we're starting. And again, you know, as things go, we'll see if it circles back around. And for those of you who are new, hi, welcome. Welcome to Vulnerable AF Friday. Welcome to my channel, Stand Yourself. I'm Nicole Michelle. And yeah, just kind of, this is where I come. Like, sometimes on Thursdays I'll talk about things that are on my mind that are not about necessarily healing and stuff, but just like things of the world. I'm trying to keep Fridays strictly to healing and my journey and my path, the things that I have experienced, been through, kind of feel like I've discovered, and the things that I'm still learning and discovering. And today is one of those still learning and discovering type days. So yeah, I'm tired of feeling tired, and I think a lot of my tiredness really does come from just my soul being tired. You know what I mean? Like, I just feel like my soul is tired. And I do feel like there's probably something underlying underneath the PTSD as well. I'm not necessarily trying to self-diagnose. I'm just very aware of patterns and things like that, and I kind of track patterns. Like, if something happens, my brain's like, like, notate that, you know, and so on and so forth. And then it happens again, or okay, I was in this mood, so I think there's a probability of maybe some bipolar, which might be also contributing to me feeling tired. And I'm not out here trying to sound like a crazy person. I'm not trying to, but it has been diagnosed in my family. I have been put on medication that, when I researched it further, one of the treatments is for bipolar 1 or whatever, which is common in females or something. And so it kind of makes sense, because I have times where I have a lot of energy and I'm up, and then I have like days where I'm just like, you know, beneath the valley, bottom of the mountain, in a hole, just drawing mud over myself and going to sleep and saying, world, leave me alone. Do you know what I mean? And is that normal? Like, is that a normal thing that most people experience? Or is that like a me thing? Like, a me thing. So, and as the day goes on, my energy will kind of pick up. But like, I'm not a morning person. I slept till 8. Okay, I felt like my body needed the rest, so I slept as late as I could before I had to start my day. And there's also been a lot going on, like a lot of processing, which I'm sure contributes as well to fatigue, overall fatigue. And like, I know if I go to a doctor, they're gonna be like, oh, you're stressed, or oh, it's PTSD, or what, you know what I mean? So it's kind of like, meh. So like, I've been doing a lot of processing and like having some realizations of maybe not the best at making or holding boundaries. Like, I definitely feel like I've improved, but it's also still very much a challenge for me. And I've definitely had moments where I can see where my PTSD makes my life a little more messy than it otherwise should be. A lot of those old patterns within myself and like my upbringing and all that, no matter how old you get and you think you get away from it and time heals all wounds and whatever, no, time gives you time to figure out how the fuck you're going to live with the wound. Like, you know what I mean? And I think some wounds can be healed. I do think some can be healed, but I feel like the more I feel like I've solved my PTSD, the more I find things I have to work on, which can be very frustrating. And today I have a lot of grace for myself, and today I don't feel so bottom of the barrel weak. So I can say that without like breaking down and becoming emotional. And there are days where when I own that reality, it literally crushes me. And it just really depends on the mood I'm in and what's been going on in life, and if it's that time of the month. And there's a lot of things that contribute, to your overall well-being of your mood, in my opinion. But I definitely know that I struggle, as much as I seem outspoken, I struggle to really speak up and advocate for myself sometimes. And I have this weird kind of sense, I'm trying to figure out how I want to phrase it. I have this weird sense of like fairness or unfairness sometimes, and that's gotten better too. But like, I remember in the past, and I'm talking about like the 2010s, okay, like 2010, 2011, like when I was still really deep in the victim mentality and the victim role, because I didn't know that I was putting myself there and keeping myself there. I just knew that I was hurt and that life had been unfair and whatever, right? And that I felt owed something because of all the unfairness and seeming injustice that I had experienced from a very young age. And I remember there would be times with my aunt who I do consider my aunt to be my mom, and that ruffles some feathers, and I really don't give a fuck, honestly. Like, I care, I don't want to hurt people, but I'm also not, again, so this is like at what point do I shrink, and what point do I allow myself to expand? I shrink to save other people from their feelings and their things that they need to work through, or do I expand to say, this is me, and this is my life, and this is what I've experienced, this is who I am, this is what I believe, this is what I feel, you know what I mean? And I very much felt like my aunt was my mom, and I had a lot of women, I've talked about this before, I think, I've had other women in my family that have tried to kind of step in and be a feminine support for me, but she's the only one that kind of felt like my mom. But I remember, like, I would be dealing with her, and I feel so bad because I was so deep in it when she was alive, and I didn't start coming out of it until just before she passed, but I was still kind of in it, you know what I mean? So, which is ironic, because I remember that day, I know I'm off topic, but I'm going to try to come back around. Basically, before I lose my train of thoughts, basically, which is something we're not supposed to say, I would give her a hard time about things where I felt like it was unfair, and I would like sort of have these like little tantrums, and I didn't feel like it was a tantrum. I felt like it was me kind of standing up for myself, but I didn't really know. I didn't know the ways to actually do that, right? I didn't know the ways to properly stand up for myself. I didn't know the ways to advocate for myself in a way that was productive and like not a tantrum, it was just, I would like melt down, kind of, not like a little kid toddler on the floor kicking and screaming, but like becoming very defensive, becoming very kind of harsh, right? So I'm sure there's a point to why I'm bringing this up, but I can't think of it now. But yeah, I definitely, I've had my struggles for sure. I was talking about the sense of unfairness. So that's kind of how I would deal with the unfairness in the past. But I don't want to be that person, because I think being old me, while she had her place, while she had her reasons, while she served a purpose and protected me, right, and kept me safe in her own mind, I don't think being that person serves me any further. Like, if I wanted to stay in that place, sure, absolutely, it would serve me. But I recognize that it's not a place that I wanted to be in. It was a place I was not happy in, and so I decided to change. And she had to go. Like, I didn't need that version of me to protect me. I needed a version of me that was going to give me grace, love me, and let me grow. And that was not her. That was not her. moments where I feel still, like this feels unfair, or, you know what I mean? Perhaps maybe even like a skewed sense of justice, like my sense of justice is so strong, or right and wrong, or rigidity even, okay? So that's kind of what I want to talk about, really, is I feel like it's been pointed out to me quite a bit recently that I can be a bit sort of strict or stern or rigid. And it sucks because part of me doesn't feel like that's necessarily wrong, right? But then there is a part of me that feels like this is because you were never shown nurturing. The rigidity comes from never being shown what nurturing is. Until I was like a teenager. And by the time I was a teenager, I was unruly, I was rebellious, I was difficult. You know what I mean? Like, I wasn't really, I saw myself as an adult, but I didn't act as an adult, basically, which I think a lot of, young adults do. Like, we get out here thinking we know so much, and we don't need people, and we don't need anybody to tell us anything, and so I don't think that's uncommon or unusual, but you pair it with PTSD and it becomes a whole different animal, and never having therapy or doing any kind of thing to manage that for like decades, okay? So it kind of upsets me to think that people think that I'm sometimes mean, or I do get set in my ways, you know what I mean? Some people don't think that zodiac signs have any real bearing, but I would say as a Taurus, mine rings pretty true. And it just kind of is what it is, and there are things that I have to figure out. I'm having to go back into the way that I went through the process of learning to love myself, right? Which is, I would be having a moment where all these old recordings of you're a piece of shit, like you're worthless, you'll never have anything, you'll never be anything, like all these messages are playing through my head on a loop. Anytime there's any slight injustice, anytime there's any slight perceived threat or failure or anything like that, right? Just automatically go into like beating myself the fuck up internally, mentally, emotionally. So I had to be like, how am I going to get out of this? You know what I mean? How am I going to stop doing this? How am I going to stop going into these spirals? And it became a puzzle that I had to solve. And I just realized, okay, where did these messages originate? Are they true? Where did they originate? Okay, no, I don't think this is true. Well, why don't I think this is true? That I'll never be anything, or I'll never have anything, or whatever, you know what I mean? Or I'm stupid, or whatever it is, right? And so I would go back through my history and point out places where, so I don't know if this is really going to apply to like being less rigid, but I would have to point out places where I was like, okay, you excelled here, you excelled here, you excelled here, so that obviously cannot be true. And so if it's not true, who said it, and why would they say it? And it kind of came down to basically the person that said this, in my opinion, is unwell, because that's the only explanation I could come up with, and that those are not the truth. And since they weren't the truth, it wasn't enough to acknowledge that it was not the truth and it came from an unwell person. I had to write a new script, you know what I mean, and be like, that's not true because this came from this person who is not well, and here are the examples that say that is not true about me. So I think I'm going to have to apply a similar principle, and one of the things too is like, sometimes I hear things about me. Okay, this is the way that I operate. This is the way that one of the tools that I feel is most important for my growth is when I hear multiple people who have no relation having the same feedback about me. and you can get mad and you can get frustrated and say, all these people are saying this about me and they're the problem. But when you have multiple people that don't know each other saying similar things about you, you have to acknowledge and accept that you are the common denominator, not them. They're not the common denominator because they're all in agreement separately, individually, okay? You're the common denominator because they all know you, but they don't know each other, and they all feel this way about you, right? So there was a time where people were saying I was a bitch, whatever, and it was that I was bitchy, whatever, and I had, to be fair, okay, I had kind of every right to be, but that didn't mean that I needed to be bitchy to everybody all the time, so I had to look at it and be like, okay, Nicole, what do we think about this, and then there was a lot of guilt too. Like, I remember there was so much guilt, like, in that growing and kind of healing some of that through learning self-love. And the only way I could learn self-love was to acknowledge the truth of the things that people were saying, and understanding that there are going to be times where I don't want to be perceived a certain way, and I do have to look at it and figure out how I'm going to fix that or change it. But then sometimes there's times where, people have an opinion, and I don't really care that that's your opinion. Like, I'm still going to be me, and that's who I am, and that's not something I really have any interest in changing. I personally may not see an issue with it. So now I have to decide, like, how much of an issue do I see with people thinking maybe that I'm a little mean, maybe I'm a little rude. I don't think I'm mean, right? But, and of course, like, when it comes from kids too, you got to kind of take it with a grain of salt, because I think really what they see as me is somebody who means what they says and says what they mean, and they follow through. And I think there's a lot of kids in this day and age who are used to a parent saying one thing and then doing another. And I'm not that. If I tell you it's going to happen, if I tell you it's going to take place, if I say, hey, this is your duty, this is your task, and if you don't do it, this is the result. If you do it, this is the result. Okay? Like, here's a reward, here's a consequence. And I think it's very important, in my opinion, that children understand the outcome of doing or not doing something that might be important for them to do, and there being a reward and a consequence when you do or do not do it. And I think that is the most important consistency that matters. So that's what I'm saying. So I'm like, at what point am I really mean? And at what point am I existing in a world that's changing? And I get it, parents want the best for their kids. They want them to have all the things they never had. But me, maybe I'm a little old school. And me, in my kind of old school way, and this is here's the real tricky part, right? Here's the interesting part of healing, okay? Even though I have a lot to be angry for, even though I have been damaged neurologically at this point, okay, from my upbringing, when I look back at the simplicity of my life, because we didn't have all that. My dad was not one of those, I'll buy you what you want, whatever you want, however you want. What do you want for Christmas? It's yours. And people might think that's mean. And even I thought that was mean when I was little. Like you stingy motherfucker. You know what I mean? But as an adult, I have so much actual appreciation for it. Despite all the bad parts, right? I appreciate the fact that he made us keep our lives simple. I appreciate the fact that I stayed grounded all the fucking time because I couldn't focus in school and I couldn't keep my grades up. And so I had, like, pretty much any privilege that you could have taken away. Like, I couldn't talk on the phone, I couldn't watch TV, like, I could listen to the radio, and I could write poetry. You know what I mean? Like, I think that's really part of the problem with the world today, is people don't spend enough damn time with themselves. And even though my life was hard, and even though my dad and I do not speak, and even though I don't think I could ever have a relationship with him, I have this weird gratitude that my childhood was not full of, like, an overly doting father and whatever. And I'm not saying that being an overly doting parent is bad. I'm just saying, like, where is the benefit? Because we see, in my opinion, I feel like society is kind of on this weird decline. And I keep hoping and praying, right? Because I do overall believe, this is not where I thought I was going to end up in this conversation. I do overall believe that the people of the world are innately, inherently good. Do you know what I mean? I don't think there's just a whole bunch of assholes out here running around being assholes. You know, I don't think the world's full of Karens. I don't think the world's full of hate. We see a lot of hate. I don't think it's full of hate. I think if it was full of hate, we would definitely be descending and falling into absolute 100% turmoil and chaos, and that's not happening because love still exists, in my opinion. But yeah, like I'm glad. It's weird because I never thought I'd be grateful for, because like as a kid you always felt left out. Like we didn't have cable, we didn't do none of that, and like as a kid, like you always felt left out and out of the, you know what I mean? But I'm oddly grateful that I wasn't allowed to watch TV, so I was forced to read, I was forced to write, I was forced to, even though a lot of my thoughts were not always the best because I really didn't want to exist. You know, like it helped me learn about my natural ability and love for poetry. You know, I read a lot of mystery books. Like I was really into like Nancy Drew and Encyclopedia Brown and things like that. And, I just think that in this day and age, you know, people just, your kids don't need everything. They don't need everything that's material, okay? They need someone who's going to give them structure. They need someone that's going to keep them safe. They need someone that's going to provide their basic needs. And they need someone to be there. They need you to be there more than they need things. You know what I mean? That's the reality. They need you there more than they need things. Period. Not going to change my mind. What am I going to Charlie Kirk this shit and get a sign? It's like, kids need you, not things. Change my mind. Kids need you, not things. Change my mind. No, because you're not going to change my mind. There's nothing you're going to say that's going to change my mind on that. In fact, this world would do well to have less things, like just things to have things, you know. Like the more simple life is, the more simple life is. If you're in a loving home anyway, you know. So. But again, like, so this is coming from kids that I mean, but I think some of it's coming from kids. Some of it's coming from adults. And some of it, there's adults that agree with me. So it's very conflicting, you know what I mean? It's like, okay, well, do I really need to address something? I feel like I definitely need to look at it, and I need to, like, sort through it and realize that what it's bringing up is the realization that I'm not very good at you know, if I had children, I don't think I'd be a coddling. If I had my own kids, I definitely don't think I would be a coddling type parent where it's like, oh, they're there all the time. Like, I firmly believe in life lessons. I firmly believe, that's how I grew up, you know what I mean? I grew up with very minimal adult supervision, you know, which sometimes was problematic, but very, very minimal adult supervision. I went to daycare for a while, and then we were left at home alone, even though we technically weren't old enough. But I had an older brother who was kind of problematic and kept getting kicked out of daycares, and so I guess, I don't know, my dad finally just threw his hands up and he was like, okay, you come straight home off the bus, you call me when you get home and you check in, and you don't answer the phone unless it rings twice, because that's how you'll know it's me. You know what I mean? And if we ever answered the phone on that first ring and it was him, oh boy, were we in trouble. So we had an answering machine and stuff like that, I think, or whatever, and, you know, all that jazz. It's like, if I called, because I didn't have caller ID when this was happening. Right? Caller ID came when I was a teenager, and it was a separate little box that you hooked up to your phone that was hooked into the wall, and we didn't, I would show you my phone that I'm using it to record. So yeah, like, just, that's kind of the way things were, you know what I mean? And like occasionally we'd get like a video game or whatever from like a family member, like a Nintendo or Sega or whatever, And even though I want to play it, I had an older brother, of course, who didn't really let me play it. And, sorry, I'm distracted again. There's a dude that opened his door. I think he's looking for something under his seat. Anyway, so, but I mean, again, like, because we were like pretty much constantly in trouble, right? We weren't doing things properly. You know, we weren't handling our business, so to speak, which again, kind of our fault, kind of not. You know what I mean? Like, when you put a child in an environment where they have to focus on survival, they're not focusing in school. Plain and simple. And if you have a kid who they were making, and honestly, school was always a struggle for me from kindergarten, because I just didn't want to do that shit. It was not worth my time, in my opinion. And look at it now. How much of that stuff that I learned do I really even use or need? Okay, talking about you're never gonna have a computer in your pocket. Okay. And that's the thing too that I think is a disservice, is that a lot of times when children are being raised, okay, as like I was a child that was being raised, you're raised in a time that will not be the time that you live in as an adult. Like, you're prepared for an adulthood that will not be the adulthood when you become an adult. And then you're prepared for that adulthood by somebody who's raising you the way. See, so here we are, we're having the ahas, right? So, because my brain was like, okay, well, I'm in this headspace of this is what I know. Like, as me saying, like, I wasn't nurtured. It was strict. And I don't think I'm as strict as the strict that I grew up in, but that strict has never left me. Do you know what I mean? That kind of, this is the way, and it will be this way, and if you want to fight me, that's fine, but it's to your detriment, right? Like, that's how I was raised. And my detriment is not, I'm going to beat your ass. My detriment is, you're going to lose something, or you're going to whatever. You know what I'm saying? So, anyway, I don't remember where I was at with that. But yeah, we're raised in a time that will not be the time when we're adults, if that makes sense. Okay? Who would have ever thought, when my generation was being raised, that we'd all be walking around with like cell phones and not talking to one another and having the arguments and fights about shit that we have arguments and fights about that keep us divided? And, you know what I mean? Like, who would have known? Like, who would have known? You know, and we were brought up by a generation that's much older traditionally and much different in their expectations. And I do think that some of that is lacking in today's day and age. Myself, one of my close friends, you know, somebody else that I know, you know, we just were like, what the fuck is going on with service these days? Like, you go to a restaurant and it's just like, back in the day, it used to be the customer was always right. So I don't know if the Karens fucked this up for us or what is going on. I don't think you should be shit on when the customer is always right. But I'm just saying, like, if you have a customer, okay, that's just like, look at it from this perspective. If what I'm saying seems way off base, that I'm not saying people should be disrespected, as in the customer's always right. I'm saying there was a time where if you had a problem, they wanted to make it right for you. Within reason. Do you know what I'm saying? And, so, the thing is, okay, there's this restaurant that we go to, and I usually just do to go. Because sometimes we don't feel like getting out of the house, really, and like going out, and then sitting down, and then tipping somebody, and then right? Being a whole production, taking an hour or more just to, like, you know, whatever. So we'll just do a pickup, food ready, typically 15 minutes. And I went in, and I always check orders because people fuck up. Okay, people fuck up. So I always check orders, because the last thing I want to do is get my ass all the way home and realize I have to fix the problem, right? Like, oh, they forgot a main component. Like, one time I went and I got some pho, and they completely didn't give me a whole thing of broth. And I knew when I picked up that bag that it felt light. I'm like, oh, it smells kind of light, you know? My intuition was like, hey, this don't feel right. And I'm like, oh, they always get it right. I'm sure it's fine, blah, 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 blah. Went home, didn't have broth. I was like, son of a bitch. And then they were about to close. I had to be like, yo, I don't got broth. I'm coming back. Like, she's like, oh, oh, they always forget the smallest things. And I'm like, I don't know, broth's kind of a key component to this whole dish. Like, you know, and so, but yeah, like, and like the manager's like, we call up there. I go up there and I'm like, okay, well, normally when they give me extra sauce, it comes in a little separate container. It's an Italian place. I'm like, they usually give me sauce. It comes in a separate container, and there's no separate container. And the hostess chick was like, oh, she's like, well, there's on the side, and then there's, you know, they just put it on there or whatever. And I'm like, okay, but I've ordered this dish multiple times, and it's always been on the side. And so one girl was going to fix it, and the girl stopped her, and it was like she just had to be right. And like, she had to prevent me from having what I was trying to have, what I felt I had paid for, what I felt I had asked for. You know what I mean? And it became this whole ordeal. And so then I went home and I complained about it. And then we called the restaurant and we talked to the owner. And he's like, oh, everybody always gives me such good feedback and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, well, we've had issues before and you probably just don't know about it because you don't hear about it. You know, but we've had issues before where something has been completely forgotten. I don't want to drive all the way back up there to get it. You know, you pay for some kind of pasta dish that doesn't have chicken, but then you add chicken and they charge you $8 for a fucking chicken cutlet, and then you go home and you realize you don't fucking have it, and then they're trying to give you a whole bunch of shit and like wanting to give you a freebie. Like, that's the thing. See, a lot of people think that whenever you're frustrated with something, I feel like this vulnerable AF Friday is all over the place today, and that's just me. That is the most vulnerable I can be. It's just all over the place. Anyway, so you know what I mean? And so like we just kind of like hung up on them, but their food is really good. Like, I think they have this chicken marsala, and I'm pretty sure they put crack in it. I don't know. It's very good. It's very good. And he's like, yeah. I was like, oh, well, the next time you're gonna come up, call, like, text. Here's my number. Text me. And it's like, so you're saying I can only get good service if you know I'm coming? Like, no, I should have good service every time that I come. Like she should have just let that girl go get the sauce to appease me, whether there was already sauce on the extra sauce or not. It doesn't matter. Like, I'm just saying, like, hey, I feel you're saying that, but I feel like I want it separate. So, do you know what I mean? It was like a whole ordeal. Like, it was a whole ordeal. And, but it's just that kind of thing, right? It seems like a little thing, but like, think about it like this, from this perspective, okay? When you watch somebody on YouTube and they're like, oh, I'm really grateful for all my viewers and blah, 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 and without you guys, I couldn't do this. Without you guys, I couldn't do this. Without the customer, you don't have a fucking business. So that's one thing, like, where I'm saying, like, I feel like some old school stuff does probably need to come back, and we need to get away from all this whatever. All I know is I'm not with all this woke. I'm gonna need you to actually become awake, not woke, awake. Like, I'm gonna need you to awaken your minds, really open your eyes, and all that jazz. So, but anyway, I feel like this has been all over the place. But yeah, so I need to like reflect on some things, and I feel like if the universe brings something to your attention, that you should definitely investigate it, because it's not by happenstance or chance or random or coincidence, right? So I do feel like the universe is saying, like, hey, maybe you're a bit rigid. Maybe you need to look at that. So that's what I'm going to be looking at. And that's obviously also going to stir up things from the past where life was not the best, even though I'm grateful for some of it, right? Like, I still can have gratitude, which is a very weird place to be that I never thought I'd be, right? Like, if you would have told, like, 18-year-old me, like, one day you're going to look back and you're going to be grateful that even though things were fucking hard and painful, like, literally and figuratively, that you're going to be grateful that you had a simple life. I never would have thought in a million years if you'd have told me you're going to look back and you're going to be glad that you didn't have cable growing up as a kid. You're going to look back and be glad that you struggled so much that you were, like, perpetually grounded. You know, like, I didn't get to go play with friends. I didn't get to talk on the phone. I didn't get to watch TV. I didn't get to do none of that shit. I had a very sheltered life. And in a lot of ways, I advocate against that. But the older I get, I'm like, you know what? I'm better off not knowing a lot of this shit I never knew, honestly. So I just feel like I'm better off for it. But anyway, if you can't stand nobody fuck else today, please stand yourself. Be kind to yourself. Be gentle with yourself. Be loving with yourself. Be patient with yourself. If the universe is trying to tell you that you're the common denominator, okay, you don't got to beat yourself up or be mad about it. You just have to be like, the universe is bringing something about me to my attention, and maybe I should investigate it a little bit and see what's going on there. Dig a little bit under the surface, stir up the water a little bit, stir the pot, whatever it is you got to do. See what's going on there. See if there's something that I need to maybe change and address, that I can be my best, highest, wonderful self. Because this is all we have control over. We have no control over all this other shit that they want us bickering and arguing and fighting about. This is the control. This is the thing that has say. This is the thing that puts things out into the world. Okay, this vessel is what puts your vibe and your consciousness out into the world, that does affect things whether you realize it, know it, or not. Okay? So, if you can't stand anybody fuck else, please stand yourself. Have a good one.